So I'd like to welcome everyone to our latest MSP community webcast. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Eric Rabbit. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here at Virtualizing. I'll be your host for today's webcast. Our topic today is a really good one that we've had a lot of questions about, which is how MSPs are virtualizing traditional on-site services. And with obviously work from home requirements that have been in place here for several weeks now, a lot of you are struggling with how to deliver services that you've always gone out on site at customers, so that's just really not an option. And then even as the country reopens, I think it's going to be quite a long time before we get back to business as usual, to where services that you've always delivered by going out on premise and maybe, being there for a few days, and that it's going to be a while for some customers, are okay with their service providers coming back in. And we've got a lot of smart, creative service providers as partners here at Virtualizing, and really one of the main goals of these webcast series is to bring in MSPs from around the country to share, best practices and what are working and some of these ideas with the community. So I'm really excited about today's webcast because to have one of our best partners come in and share some suggestions and what's really been working for them. So as usual, if you have any questions at all, please use the questions function in your GoToWebinar. I'll get to them as soon as I can if we have time. If we don't, though, we'll use it for future webcasts. As I always say, we drive all of these topics based off what you guys, the MSP community, wants to hear. So with that, I'd like to introduce our guest today. Chris Lewis is with us. He's the Information Security Manager at NetSource One in Saginaw. Hi, Chris. Thanks so much for joining.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. So I'd like to get started, I think, just to kind of introduce NetSource One to the audience here, and just give us a little bit about the company. How long have you guys been in business, and what sort of services and customers do you focus on the most?
Sure, yeah. So NetSource One started out in 1999. We've got still several of the original members of that team on board. So, good long-lasting legacy there. We're headquartered, as you said, out of Saginaw, Michigan, and we have a secondary office in the Troy area, which is just north of Detroit. In terms of IT services, we kind of offer a little bit of everything. Traditional PC, server, and firewall maintenance, up to hosted VDI, cloud-based telephony, and of course things like managed security with Virtualizing. Customer-wise, we kind of run the gamut when it comes to industries. We've got a large presence in financial, government, and healthcare verticals, though.
Great, yeah, good strong verticals at any time, right? So
that's right, yeah.
yeah. So, I ask the same question every webcast, at least to get started. I'd like you to share, overall, what impacts have you seen in your client base with the COVID-19 crisis? Are you seeing, customers being severely impacted or shutting down, or just in general?
Well, we've been pretty fortunate in that so many of our customers are classified as essential services. So when the original stay-at-home order went into place, we had a lot of requests for things like help us expand our VPN usage, help us get soft phone set up for our call centers out of their homes and things like that. But then we did see a pretty sharp drop off for a while. People just didn't know what to expect. They kind of put the brakes on everything. And since then, companies are starting to say, okay, as everybody keeps saying, this is the new normal now. And so they realize they've got to find a way to operate. And we've actually started to see work pick up pretty significantly here, especially in the last couple of weeks. But again, like I say, we've been pretty fortunate in that so many of the customers that we handle are required to stay open and so necessary.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I've seen that theme as well, as we've, not only had the webcast, but really just been talking to customers in that the last couple of weeks. But it seems like maybe the initial shock of having to work from home is, people are starting to settle in a routine and getting back to business and re-engaging on IT projects that they know they have to do and things like that. So I'm glad you guys are seeing that as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's definitely how things seem to be playing out is now that people have kind of gotten themselves established and figured out how to make all of this work, uh, now they're saying, okay, let's get back to what we had on our regularly scheduled workflow there, and let's keep moving with those projects.
Right, exactly. So, I said the topic for today's webcast is really, creative and new approaches to what have traditionally been on-site services. And I know when we talked, in preparation for this call, it's something that you guys have really been successful at, especially in a few key areas. So can you give us some examples of where you guys have taken some unique approaches to some of these services you formerly provided on site?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, we have all these great tools at our disposal in terms of collaboration, things like WebEx, GoToMeeting, Skype, you name it, a million different variations out there. But I don't think we ever really made full use of them until now. What we ask ourselves now is, do we actually really need to go physically visit the customer for these things? For example, one of the key components of HIPAA risk assessments, which is something that we do frequently for customers, is to do a walkthrough of the building and assess physical security. Now, in the
Hmm.
past, we would always do that by being there at their office in person and walking around with someone and to assess it directly. And now we just have someone join a WebEx with us on their smartphone because there's an app for everything these days and do a virtual walkthrough. We can ask them to show us what we need to see and still provide that same full assessment without ever actually setting foot in the building. And likewise, there's no need for us to be on site to run the network scans and things of that sort. We can walk them through installing our RMM software and away we go. It's become a way for us to offer those same services to customers that aren't necessarily within easy driving distance either.
Right. Yeah, that's fantastic. So, not only adapting to the current new normal, as you said, but then I'm sure you guys might keep some of those in place well long after this, right? For customers that, you've traditionally burned a lot of car time just getting to, we could probably, put this as a standard practice going forward. Is that the case?
Absolutely. It's something that we're just looking for going forward and using that to our best advantage because, yeah, like you say, it's that time on the road that is essentially wasted time and wasted money, not just for us as a company, but for the customer as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and early in my career, I did on-site security assessments and things like that as well. And similar kind of concept, right? I mean, you had to go out physically and plug physically into the network and run scans. But yeah, you burn so much windshield time and being you spend more time getting to or setting up and plugging in than you actually do providing value to the customer. And so, things like that. I think that's a really smart idea to start, utilizing the tools you've got and letting them carry around an iPad to do the physical assessment side. I'm sure it'll dramatically increase your efficiency as well, right?
Well, hopefully that's the goal. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we all want to do is try and maximize those hours and figure out how we can get the most out of them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So how are your customers reacted to the approach? Have you gotten any pushback at all from wanting to do the virtual assessments?
No, so far it's actually been really positive, especially like I say, for those customers that are further away from our main office. They don't have that added expense of the travel time. It's more efficient if there's multiple sites, and it makes scheduling a lot more flexible. Instead of having to block out an entire day of somebody being on site, now you can break that engagement up into shorter sessions. You can do a couple hours here, a couple hours there, and it works better into their schedule as a result.
Yeah, that's great. Now, and you're not like shipping them an iPad or something, right? You're just having them join a GoToMeeting or something like that from their mobile.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, pretty much all of the major players in terms of online meetings have some sort of mobile app, and everybody's got a smartphone anymore, it seems like. So yeah, we're just having them fire that up, and away we go.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So if you had to pick one of those sort of traditional services that you'd recommend to the audience that they focus on virtualizing, would that be it, or are there some other ones that you guys have really put some time into virtualizing as well?
Well, I think not necessarily one particular thing that I would point to. I just recommend that MSPs look at their current workflow and ask themselves, where are you spending the majority of your on-site time today? Does that work really require you to be physically present at that customer? Or is it just how you've always done it? Sometimes we get caught up in handling things the same way because it's what we're used to, or because we think the customer prefers that face-to-face interaction. If you're doing day-to-day troubleshooting in person instead of remotely, you're not getting the full utilization out of those support engineers, and you're losing valuable time to travel. And switching that mindset, it not only recoups time for your engineers, but ultimately it's a cost savings for customers, like I say, because it gets them a faster, it gets them less travel time, and it gets them a faster resolution because they're not having to wait for you to drive over and do that sort of thing. You'll never be able to reach 100% remote. It's just not practical. I mean, physical equipment breaks, you need to do installs. And some customers are always going to feel more comfortable just having somebody there.
Yeah.
But if you can kind of drive that as the exception rather than the rule, you can start to make that transition. And I think once customers see that benefit in the cost and the turnaround time, they're going to be happier with the remote service.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's smart. I think one of the things you said there was sort of assuming that customers want that FaceTime. And, to your point, there's no doubt that some customers are just more comfortable, seeing people, whether they're performing the services or, meeting afterwards or things like that. But I think it is really important to remember that, over the last few years, sessions like this using, Zoom for video calls and that have really, permeated a lot of different businesses. And, I think a lot of customers are much more comfortable with remote meetings now than they were even just 2 or 3 years ago, right? And especially over the last couple of months, everyone's had to get used to it. And so I think it really presents a unique opportunity for MSPs to move to that virtual meeting setting, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if there's a good takeaway from all of this is, like you say, it's kind of forced a lot of businesses to find ways to move those interactions online. And once that comfort level is a little bit stronger, then there's less pushback. You're never going to get away from that completely. Absolutely not. I mean, we still have customers today that we have regularly scheduled on-site visits. That's part of their contract with us, just because of the way the business operates in some cases. But there's definitely, I think, going to be a higher acceptance rate going forward.
Yeah, I agree. And I know you've got a lot of customers that are, uh, a decent drive time away or something like that. Like you mentioned, I live in Texas, but, everything's very spread out here, and
Right.
and a lot of states are like that, right? And I think it's something that the MSP should really think about, because as they are able to take advantage of everyone getting more comfortable with the virtual world, that dramatically expands the geographic area that you can provide services in, right? Like you said, I mean, you're not always going to be able to do maybe break fix services in some things, but some of the services you can significantly expand out to smaller communities that would have to spend half of their invoices just windshield time getting tech out there.
That's
Now
right.
if you skip that part, you can actually offer services to them now. So that's a
Yeah, that's
whole new
right.
world.
I mean, we've always had kind of a geographically spread out customer base anyway. I mean, we have customers in New York, we have customers in Chicago,
Yeah.
um, but that definitely has become more prevalent. I would say just in the last 2 years in particular.
Yeah, yeah. And like you said, I mean, being able to do it over iPad or something like that, being able to install RMM tools on a customer workstation so you don't have to even ship them anything to do assessments, that's significantly, improves your ability to go out and do that. So, or reach out to those remote communities and do that.
Yeah,
That's great.
absolutely.
Well, fantastic. Are there any final thoughts for, our attendees today, or any other tidbits you'd like to share?
Well, I think you already hit on it there, which is that, start thinking less about geography when it comes to your customer base. Focus on the things that you're good at, regardless of where that customer is located. Uh, Play to your strengths in terms of, particularly if you have skill sets within your organization with specialty software. Maybe you have people that really know electronic health record systems well, things like that. With remote collaboration tools and remote management, physical distance just it's less of a barrier all the time now. And so it's just time to kind of stop thinking about pursuing customers based on geography so much as specialization and where you can really carve out that niche difference.
Yeah, I think that's really smart, really good information for the community, and I think a lot of MSPs will really, take that to heart and spend some time designing those services. And it's like, we've been talking about all along. It's the perfect time to do it, right? If things are even a little bit slower than they were a few months ago, as things start to pick back up, it's a great time to rethink those, redesign services, and being able to ignore geography is a huge benefit for MSPs to grow. So
Yeah, absolutely.
great. Well, thanks so much for your time. We made it right at just the 20-minute mark, and this is perfect. We've been running long the last couple of weeks, so I finally hit the time that I was supposed to. So I appreciate you helping me with that. Um, but yeah, thanks so much for sharing this information, and we'll definitely have you back on and do it again.
Oh, terrific. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye now.